Hi, I'm Kat. If you're new to my channel, I talk about sustainable fashion and books, and today is our first Knit and Lit. So this is going to be a new series on my channel where I do DIY projects, not necessarily knitting, but it rhymed, and talking about books at the same time. And the books I'm talking about today are random books that made me cry. I don't usually read books to cry. I have not really been able to handle like really sad books lately, just given the state of the world and things going on in my personal life. But these are books that I picked up, well, most of them I picked up for escapism, and then they made me feel things against my will. So we'll talk about those. First off, I want to show you the project that I'm working on. It's a crochet butterfly crop top. So you can see this is like one side of it, and I'm working on the second side right now. I'll put a picture up of what it's supposed to look like, and I'm using a free tutorial by Shyler Crochet, so I'll link that down below as well. So right now I'm working on this like increasing portion to make the wing bigger. This is the part that's like gonna cover my boob. But yeah, let's see if I can multitask. So the first books I want to talk about, it's King of Scars and Rule of Wolves, and these are part of the Grishaverse world by Leigh Bardugo. I have a video about Shadow and Bone and watching the Netflix adaptation on my channel if you want to see that. So these books take place after Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom in the Grishaverse universe. If you don't know anything about it, the Grishaverse is this world where there are people with Grisha powers. They're kind of like benders in Avatar: The Last Airbender, if you've watched that show. And there's just like a country called Ravka where Grisha is the only place they can really be free, but even so, like they're conscripted into military service basically. The books before this talk about a war that Ravka has been going through for centuries, and some of the characters in those original books show up in these books. So some of my favorite side characters from the original books, Nikolai, Zoya, Nina, Jenya, just to name a few. And it follows Nikolai and his attempts to basically heal the country, but there's a lot of shit he has to deal with. There's trauma, there's PTSD, there's magical shit. Oh my god, this is really hard. Like, I'm not even crocheting at all. Yeah, so I haven't cried in any of her other books. Like, I remember like reading Crooked Kingdom, which is the second book of Six of Crows, and there's like some really sad parts in there. I watched Read with Cindy's emotional breakdown over Crooked Kingdom, and honestly, like watching her video made me cry because I'm like a sympathetic crier, and like watching people cry makes me cry. But like actually reading the books didn't make me cry for some reason. These books, I don't know what it is. Like, I think just because the books focus on so much of the aftermath of the war, it also goes into Zoya's and Nikolai's backstories a lot. And Zoya and Nikolai are my favorite characters. Like, I just love that trope of like hot bitchy woman and golden retriever man who simps for her. And that's like, they're my favorite pairing, besides Kaz and Inej, of course. So in the Grishaverse trilogy, you first meet Zoya, and if you watch the show, like she comes off as a bitch because she is. But like, in these books you get like a better idea of like why she's so like cold and frigid, and like what is, you know, like what has happened to her in the past to make her so closed off to other people and to love. And it's just really sad. Like, I don't want to give any spoilers, but basically like people die. I mean, there's a war going on, and Zoya just feels like she's failing everyone because her like most valued quality about herself is that she's strong, and then she feels like she's failing everyone that she can't like protect, and it's just and she like holds everyone at a distance because she's like too guarded to let people in because it hurts when she loses them. But there's this really wonderful scene where Jenya and Zoya are talking, and Jenya's like, you know, even if you hold people at a distance, like when you lose them, it still hurts because like because like that's what love is. Like love just Jenya's like, you can't stop yourself from being hurt when you love someone, and that just like really resonated with me because I should probably go to therapy instead of like reading these books about fictional characters that reveal to me my own psychological issues. But it's really sad, but also really like heartwarming at the end when Zoya, you know, confronts all of her own fears and then overcomes them because she realizes that like, yeah, like it's true. Love does hurt, but it doesn't mean that it's not worth it, and it doesn't mean that she is incapable of feeling it just because she's so afraid. I think I gave King of Scars like a 3 and then Rule of Wolves like a 3.5. So these were pretty low ratings in comparison to Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, which I gave like both 5 out of 5. The writing to me was just like not as good as her Six of Crows duology, but for some reason the emotional impact was a lot stronger for me. So I don't know. I think the pacing was a little slow as well and kind of weird, but it was definitely like really memorable. I feel like the books kind of gave me therapy. Like, I don't know. If you are a fan of Grishaverse, like definitely read these. I'm curious if you also cry during the Zoya chapters or like that's just me. So next I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about this romance novel Beach Read by Emily Henry. So I have been on a romance novel kick this year and last year, and it's just like the genre is just so soothing and comforting, especially with everything going on in the world. And it's just really nice to escape into a world where like people have great sex, people fall in love, and everything, like you're guaranteed a happy ending. This romance novel kind of like surpassed everything that I've come to expect from the genre. Like this, I think, is the best romance novel I have read ever. So Beach Read follows this romance writer named January, and she inherits her dad's beach house after he dies. And the problem with the beach house is that it's where her dad used to go to be with his mistress. And she only found out about the mistress after he died. So she hasn't been able to confront him about any of it. There's just so many unanswered questions for her. And she's going to stay there because she's at this point where she's really broke and she doesn't really have another choice. So she goes, and then she discovers that the beach house right next to hers is owned by her college nemesis, who is a serious literature writer named Gus. And he's always like made her feel like he has looked down on her romance writing, like he doesn't understand why, you know, all of her stories have happy endings. He's all about like really sad, serious, great American novels, etc. But then when January actually talks to Gus, she discovers that like they're both going through like writer's block. So they create a bet. He will try to write a romance novel and she will try to write a contemporary literature novel. And at the end of the bet, whoever sells their book first wins. So then they take each other on field trips to teach each other about, you know, their own writing processes. So she takes him on a lot of like really cute dates, like going to the carnival, and then he takes her on interviews with like former cult members, which, you know, romantic in a different way. But the book is just really sweet. The banter is like laugh out loud funny. I did not think that anything could make me simp for a man named Gus, but I stand corrected. The parts that made me cry are, you know, like towards the end where January really has to confront like her own feelings about her dad, her own like conflict about, you know, like why does she always feel the need for there to be a happy ending when like the world doesn't actually work that way. And when Gus has to confront his own feelings about like why he doesn't believe that happy endings are a thing he can have. And the emotional connection between the two writers is just like really, it feels really real. Even though it was like a rom-com, it felt like an epic romance, you know, like The Notebook, but funny. So yeah, it just like, I picked up this book expecting like a heartwarming read. I didn't expect it to make me cry, but I'm really glad it did because it meant that it like really touched me. I think I gave this one a 4 out of 5 or maybe a 4.5 out of 5. The only thing I didn't like was that the ending, which is different in the US book versus the UK version, was a little bit cheesy, and I felt like it kind of didn't go with the ending message of what I thought the book was going to be about. But overall, it was a really, really good read. I'm really excited for Emily Henry's next novel, People We Met on Vacation. I'm saving that to read on vacation. Okay, so the next book I want to talk about is A Quart of Silver Flames by Sarah J Maas. And if you don't know why I'm laughing, it's because this book is basically like 700 pages, and I think at least like 600 of them are like smut. And I did not expect this book to make me cry. Like, I didn't expect this book to evoke any kind of reaction in me besides like, you know, like those kinds of reactions. Because you don't know about Sarah J Maas, she is known for her A Quart of Thorns and Roses series, and it's basically about fairy smut. So A Quart of Silver Flames takes place after that trilogy, and it's about two side characters in the original trilogy, Nesta and Cassian, and all of the wild sex that they have. I mean, it's funny because like I shouldn't even say I read this book because I mostly skipped the part to the scenes with sex, and then all the parts where, you know, Sarah J Maas would try to write plot, I was like, you know what, like I've been there when you try to write plot,
and I don't want to be there again.
And then towards like the second half and like the end, I got invested. So basically the story follows Nesta, who is going through like PTSD and trauma from the war, and she's dealing with feeling like she's let everyone down. She feels like she's let people die. She feels like she's not strong enough to protect anyone, and that's why she's so closed off and like just mean to other people. And she's kind of like Zoya in the Grishaverse trilogy, except, you know, not as good. But like, as you can tell, I have a type about like the kinds of female characters I like to read about. And then Cassian, who is her love interest, basically, you know, helps her heal by teaching her how to like defend herself. He helps her form this self-defense class for survivors of sexual assault. He like is there for her when she's just like a mess because of her trauma, and like is basically not letting anyone like get through to her, and he's like really patient, and it's very sweet. And he also, you know, rails her. It's all great. And then towards the end, like Nesta starts to make like these really wonderful female friends. She's never had like real female friends before. So I'm like already a sucker for that because like I love my friends. I went to a women's college. Like I think female friendships transformed my life. And then at the end, there's this part where she is able to kind of like redeem herself. She's experienced like other people's love, and therefore she feels like she's strong enough to make a decision that is ultimately selfless. And like, I love that. Like, I love that for her. I think I gave this book like a 3. And the Avatar series I gave like 2 for the 2 books that I read, because I would not recommend those books. If you're looking for spice and some nice feelings about female friendship, then I would recommend. Okay, so the last book is Minor Feelings by Kathy Park Hong. Honestly, I haven't finished this book because it's a book of essays about the Asian American consciousness, and it's pretty heavy. For obvious reasons, this book keeps making me cry. Like I haven't read, like I've read a lot of books by Asian American authors, but I definitely tend to read fiction, and this is, I think, one of the first non-fiction books I've read about being Asian American. And there were just so many parts that made me feel so seen, and to have this really gifted writer talk about these experiences and like validate them, just, it's really, really affirming. But it's also really sad because then there are so many things that I'm like, oh, like this is like truly a shared trauma. Like so many people have been through this. Even in the first essay, there's this part where she talks about the Asian American doctor who was pulled off of that flight, and there's this part where she talks about how like when he was pulled off by the security guard, he made this like really inarticulate, like almost animal sort of noise, and how that was recorded and then like it went viral, and now like everyone's seen it, and you search that guy's name, like that's probably the first thing you'll see. And then there's this thing that she says about like how long did it take for him to prove that he was a well-spoken man. It just really like hit home for me as a child of refugees as well, because the man she talks about was a refugee of the Vietnam War, and so are my parents. I mean, those are definitely like things that my parents have gone through, like trying to prove that they are, you know, well-spoken and smart, even though it's just because of the accents that they have that make people think otherwise. So I don't know, just second generation things. Oh, I should rename this series to Cry and Crochet. But those were the books I wanted to talk about, and next, like, I wanted to talk about books that I think will make me cry but I haven't read yet. So one of the books I want to talk about next is Crying in H Mart. So this was given to me by a friend, Shirley from Classified Closet. I'll link her channel down below. But this is a memoir by the singer of Japanese Breakfast, and it's about losing her mom as a half Korean and half white person, and losing her mom's like losing her like connection to her Korean heritage. I definitely like, you know, have this fear of not having that connection to my heritage, like once my parents are gone, and like, you know, if I had kids, like, and they asked me questions about being like Chinese, like what would I say? Like I don't even speak Chinese. So anyway, it's just like a whole, like it's going to make me sob, I just know it. And next I have People We Met on Vacation. This is also by Emily Henry, the author of Beach Read, and I think this might make me cry in like a wholesome way. One of my friends read it. I think she said it made her cry. So I'm ready for a nice comforting cry. I think that's the kind of cry it'll give me. Two best friends, Poppy and Alex. They've been best friends for 10 years, and every year they take a vacation together. And it's about them, like, you know, eventually like realizing that they're in love. And I think just because of the time span, the emotional intensity of that relationship is going to be really, really good, and I think it'll make me cry. So next I have The Death of Vivek Oji, which has been on my bookshelf for like almost a year, like half a year. It's embarrassing, but it starts with a son dying, and it's about the family's journey to discover, you know, why he died and like what led to that, and I think it'll make me cry. Okay, and then last I have The Leavers by Lisa Coates. This has been on my bookshelf for like 2 years. It's highly embarrassing. One of the reasons I haven't read this is because I'm really afraid of the emotional impact it will have on me. So it's about an undocumented Chinese immigrant who's the main character's mom, and the main character is 11 years old, and then the mom disappears, and it's about him like growing up and being adopted by a white family and growing up without his mom. I just don't see how this won't make me bawl. So I honestly, like, I don't know when I'm gonna read this. Like, I've talked about it here, so maybe I'll be held accountable to reading this, but I think it's gonna make me cry and I'm scared. So that was it for the books. I think I achieved like 2 rows of crocheting during this entire video because I was flailing my arms about a lot. And this was harder than I expected. Hi, so I actually did finish this top. It's about 2 days after I filmed that video, and I wanted to show you all and give you all closure, unlike the closure that January from Beach Read never got from finding out about her dad's entire second life after he passed away. But anyway, this is what it looks like. I haven't sewn in the loose threads yet, but you can see it's a butterfly, and it crosses in the back like that. It was pretty easy. I think it took me like maybe 5 sessions of like sitting down and really doing it, but altogether it didn't take that long. And if you try out this pattern or you read any of the books and they made you cry, or even if they didn't make you cry, let me know. I would love to know your thoughts, and I'll definitely be sharing more pictures of this top on Instagram, so you can check me out there. And I'll see you all next time.